Hey guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. My nickname is iFacePalm, and in this episode we are going to take a closer look at the latest marathon reward tank, the German Tier 8 Kampfpanzer 07RH premium tank, that right off the bat seems to offer an interesting merge between a light and a very flexible medium tank. And during this tank review we'll be looking into whether if it's worth the marathon grind and or gold, how its tank statistics looks. I'll compare its stats against a few other similar premium medium tanks, which will be followed up with a quick armor profile rundown with focus on its weak spots and strengths. And afterwards I will take you guys alongside two not surprisingly very recent battles, which hopefully will give you guys a good idea of this tank in action. And finally I will finish up with an extended sum up and my rating of this German tank. Okay guys, so let's get started. So what is this Kampfpanzer 07RH all about, and does it have the potential of breaking the meta or maybe even becoming competitive for skirmish battles? Well, the thing is that when I initially took my very first look at this tank, then I of course quickly noticed its alpha damage of only 200. So to begin with, it was definitely not looking very promising, because an alpha damage of 200 is directly and very strongly indicating to us what to generally expect from this tank and how challenging it is going to play. The other thing is that right off the bat this tank seems to have quite a lot in common with the Soviet T-44-100, which I personally find super enjoyable, but of course very skill demanding to play well with. And for this German tank that now suddenly boasts a better mobility than its Soviet counterpart at the cost of alpha damage and even armor, then the question naturally becomes whether the trade pays off or not. Because if the Kampfpanzer 07RH is just a lighter variant of the T-44-100, then this tank should actually have the potential of becoming one of my new favorite Tier 8 tanks, because I personally would any day pick mobility and gun handling for the sacrifice of armor. And that of course leaves us with a few questions. Has this tank become my new favorite? Is it worth the marathon grind? How hard is this tank to play with? And which type of player are going to love this tank? And in my opinion, most importantly, which type of tank commander should definitely think twice before acquiring this tank? Well, let's take a deeper look guys by doing a quick stats rundown with my current crew and tank setup. So for the crew, luckily this tank comes with 4 brand new 0 per crew members. And the thing to notice here is that the commander also takes the role of being a radio operator, meaning that this particular crew will fit perfectly in, for example, a Leopard PTA tech tree line. So naturally they all have brothers in arms, and afterwards I fully focused the commander towards the 6th sense and the view range, and now towards the camouflage skills. For the gunner and driver, some gun handling and mobility, which is followed up with even more camouflage. So nothing out of the ordinary for a very mobile medium tank. And for the equipment, I have fitted a commander's vision system, vertical stabilizer and ventilation. We'll go into more details why I have selected the following equipment during this quick rundown. And for the ammunition, then I have selected 40 AP shells, which are capable of dealing a very low alpha damage of only 200, together with an average penetration of 205. 205 is around the middle, because it is not that rare that many medium tanks actually have just below 200, but it's definitely nothing special. And again, when we look at the shield velocity, it is again at the average level of 962. And for the premium shells, I have fitted 28 heat shells, which each are capable of dealing that extra 50 penetration at the cost of nearly 100 meters per second of shield velocity. And this is definitely a downside. I actually very rarely use these particular shells for 2 reasons. First of all, yes, that 100 meters per second might not seem a lot, but when you shoot at very long range, then it very often feels super challenging to hit anything on the move. But I still must highlight that the biggest downside of this particular shells is the shield cost, because 4,400 for one shield that deals only 200 alpha damage, that is extremely expensive. So at least personally, I barely ever use those heat shells. But one of the interesting things here to notice is actually those high explosive shells, because they have a potential average damage of 320, but they have an average penetration of 90. It is actually quite good. Okay guys, let's continue. And for the consumables, nothing out of the ordinary. Small repair kit, small first aid kit, and some chocolate. Okay guys, so we had an average damage of 200, together with the average penetration of 205, a rate of fire of 13.85. That leaves us with a gun loading of 4.33 seconds, which actually starts to look quite good. Furthermore, check this gun traverse speed of 57 degrees. And not only that, it features also a gun depression of -9. And when we look at the aiming time, then check this guys, 1.3 seconds, which looks completely insane and extreme. But of course guys, keep in mind that the aiming time, in my opinion, is probably one of the most misleading statistics, because the aiming time is not 1.3 seconds until you're fully aimed. It's 1.3 seconds until you're 1/3 fully aimed. So this means that this tank will be fully aimed if you're not traversing your hull or your turret, but just driving and stopping the tank in, yes, 3.9 seconds. And here we got the dispersion 0.3. This again starts to look good, together with a stunning average damage per minute of 2770. Because one of the strengths of this Kampfpanzer 07 is definitely its high DPM, because this DPM you usually only see at this tier 4 tank destroyers. This is also why, based on your playstyle, what you also can do is to switch the commander's vision system with a gun rammer to achieve more than 3000 DPM per minute. But personally, for my playstyle, as I tend to very often use this tank more in the role of a light tank, then I definitely take the advantage of having that extra focus towards the vision. And for the HP pool, this tank features 1350 HP, together with a hull armor of 115, 75-25, and turret armor of 80, 60, 60. We will of course go into more details during the armor profile rundown. And for the mobility, guys, check this. Horsepower per ton of 23.1. It might seem kind of mediocre, but the good thing here is that its hidden statistics are actually helping it out, because it has very good terrain resistances, excluding soft terrain. Not only that, check the top speed of 65 and a reverse speed of 25. And it is quite impressive, because I honestly got surprised how big the difference feels whether you're reversing with 23 an hour or 25 an hour. And also the tank features a beautiful traverse speed of nearly 67 degrees. So mobility wise, it looks amazing. And therefore, in my opinion, there's no need for a turbocharger. And the camera rating with the current crew is around 31.7 when stationary and 24.5 when moving, which is very decent for a medium tank in my opinion. And for the last important figure, we got the view range. The thing is, guys, that as you might have noticed, is that I'm using advanced vertical stabilizer together with an advanced venting system. And especially the venting system together with a crew that is maxed out in view range allows me to not use coated optics on this tank. Because in my opinion, this tank is super dependent on that you have a very skilled crew. Because if you have semi-new crew in this tank and you're using ordinary equipment, then I would directly switch the commander's vision system with the coated optics. Okay guys, let's continue with the stats comparison. Okay guys, so here in this stats comparison, we're going to compare the Panzer 07 RH against the T-44-100, the Panzer 58, AMX CDC, and the Panzer 88. And we're starting out by taking a look at the DPM. The Panzer 07 features a beautiful DPM of 2400, and here we quickly see that it is way better than the general around 2000 DPM that is very standard for this particular tank class. The only big difference is of course the Panzer 88, which not that long time ago received that much needed damage buff from 240 to 280. It is also to showcase that if you're looking for a very high DPM tank, then the Panzer 88 could be an alternative depending on your playstyle and preference in a tank. The Panzer features a penetration of 205, which puts it around the middle. And when we take a look at the damage, yes, not surprisingly, this is the worst here, because 200 is very low. You usually only see a damage output that low on the lowest alpha damage in the light tank class. So right off the bat, 200 or 250 might not seem a lot, but it really is. Because a good example is like the Panzer 88 that was seen like one of the worst tanks in the game not that long time ago when it had 240, but suddenly when they buffed it by just 40 damage more per shell, and suddenly, yes, it is not an overpowered tank, but it definitely jumped from being one of the worst tanks into the middle. The rate of fire, yes, not surprisingly, it is the best here, with a standard base reload time of 5 seconds. And for the shell velocity, 962, which is definitely not special number. And the thing is that personally for me, I really value shell velocity a lot. And whether the shell velocity of 962 or 700 or 1100, that makes a gigantic difference. So the 962, it's okay, but I still wish it had more, because you are relying so much on actually penetrating the tanks to take advantage of that DPM. But what happens when we change to the premium shells? Well, let's take a look. There we go. And the thing here to notice first is of course that Panzer uses heat shells, where the other 4 tanks actually uses APCR. Personally, I would any day prefer those APCR, because we directly see that in the shell velocity, because 870, yeah, that's no burner. And when we take a look at the 4 other competitors here, then I'm definitely getting jealous in regarding of the shell type and the shell velocity, especially for the Panzer 58. And when we take a look at the penetration for those gold shells of 255, then again it doesn't really seem to offer something extra. And for the gun handling, we have that beautiful base aim time of 1.5 seconds, and we can directly see who's the king here in this comparison, because 1.5 seconds, that is extreme. But keep in mind guys, that in general the definition of wargaming's so-called aim time, it should definitely be taken with a grain of salt, but it's still a good indication what to expect when you compare it against some of the other quite agile medium tanks. And for the dispersion of 0.35, here it is definitely at the lower end, similar to the T-44-100. But as you are so dependent on actually making your shots count, then I personally wouldn't mind to sacrifice some of the aim time to get a better gun dispersion. The 0.35 is not bad, but for this particular tank and for that low alpha damage of 200, then it can be challenging at times. Because when we look at the hidden figures and moving or traversing, the figures again looks very good, especially when we compare against the Panzer 58 or the AMX CDC, which I reviewed the other week. But it still showcases here that the T-44-100 has actually a better gun handling, and this is of course similar for the turret traverse. At 0.10 it is the best together with the Panzer 58 in this comparison, not far from the T-44-100, but for a gun that has that challenging alpha damage, then I personally wouldn't mind that this figure would have been at 0.10 together with a turret traverse of 0.08. Also to notice here is the gun handling after firing of value of 5, and this value in some way also seems kinda misleading because I honestly do not notice this penalty. And for the last gun handling figures of 15 degrees, not the best. Gun depression, which the tank features of -9 degrees, is very decent. And for the mobility, this tank features the beautiful forward speed of 65 an hour, which you can quickly see here that this tank is really at another level. And that is also true for the reverse speed of 25. And similar to differences you might experience with your tanks that has a reverse speed of either 20 or 23. For the power to weight ratio, 23.33 is again putting this tank very nicely here. The AMX CDC has taken the throne here, but not really, because as we can see here that the AMX CDC features heavy tank terrain resistances, so all of this horsepower per ton in reality is around somewhere between 22 and 25 at best. So in general guys, the terrain resistance here looks very nice, and if you guys have already seen my review of the T-44-100, which really is one of my favorite tanks due to its fantastic mobility, then these two tanks seems to be very similar in many aspects. Besides, strangely enough, the soft terrain, which is at 2.2. Difference might not seem quite gigantic, but it feels surprisingly sluggish there. It is not devastating, but it's definitely noticeable that suddenly it loses its magic mobility at that terrain. For the turret traverse, 50, which is best in class again. Tank traverse, 55, again best in class. So in general, it has a lot of similarities with the T-44-100, but it's just lighter. Besides, of course, the soft terrain. For the armor, a hull armor of 115, 75, 25, and a turret armor of 80, 60, 60. But we're of course going to take a closer look during the armor profile rundown in just a few seconds. For the HP 1350, which is quite generic for this tier and places it around the middle. Panther 88 takes the top spot with those beautiful 1500. And for the last figure we got the camo value of 14.36, which is very nice. It is surprisingly not as good as the T-44-100, and of course the similarity continues when moving. And here we also see directly where some of the biggest weaknesses, especially for the Panzer 88, with camo values that seems to lean more towards a heavy tank camo. And to finish up, we had a base view range of 390. Okay guys, let's continue with a quite interesting armor profile. Okay guys, so here we have the armor profile of the Kampfpanzer 07 RH, and for this analysis we're going to use its 205mm of penetrating AP shells, and let's take a look how it looks in its live view. Yeah, so right off the bat guys, not very impressive. That especially goes for the turret, because having a rounded turret might seem as a good idea, but the thing is that it really isn't, because what actually happens is that especially this part near to the gun is barely angled and only offers an effective value of just above those 80, and the increase isn't that extreme until we go at the very edge. Ironically enough, the hull armor of this tank, while it's not supreme, it is not bad, and at the upper plate ranging from 180mm to around 190, and this is due to the quite nice armor angle as you see here. The lower plate offers values that are ranging between 166 to around 173. But what about if we utilize the full 9 degrees of gun depression? Well, let's take a look. And we can directly see here what actually happens with the upper plate, because check this guys, 250mm of effective armor. This is actually not bad, but unfortunately this tank features a huge turret that is penetrable in every single spot. And one thing here to notice guys, check what happened with the turret when we moved it down. Let's take a look how it looks actually in the visual view. This is what I was talking about regarding it has something unique. It looks quite weird, but I still think it's quite cool. But it also highlights that if you're fighting on a ridge line and you don't utilize the full 9 degrees of gun depression, then you actually end up making your tank bigger and easier for the enemy to hit. But nevertheless, let's continue. Okay, so what about its side armor? Well, the interesting part here is that you definitely side scrape with this tank, as you can clearly see here both in the upper and at the lower part. It is filled with those extra spaced armor. And if you're fighting on a ridge line and using those 9 degrees of gun depression, then you can definitely see where its strengths are. But again, it still shows a gigantic portion of your tank. If you're fighting a ridge line, you're just showing your turret, doesn't really look that challenging. And for the side, we have values that in general are somewhere around 180, 60, 70, and 80mm. And for the upper part of the hull armor, we have values of just above 80 and just below values of around 75, with the exception of 115mm where the tracks meets. And from the rear, then again features a not impressive value of 60mm, with of course a tendency towards increasing the further we get out to the side, around 27mm, and at the lowest part 25. So really nothing out of the ordinary. And it's a bit shame that it sacrifices its turret armor, get that extra extra hull armor, because I would any day prefer to switch these two values around. Okay guys, let's take a look at two games I played, not surprisingly, very recently. Okay guys, so here we are on El Haluf. I'm playing with Cold Hands and 12 PAs. And here we are bottom tier. Now Kampfpanzer 07RH. The thing is, how much will it actually mean that we are bottom tier? Because in general, when I play light tanks, it doesn't really matter what tier I'm up against. Because it's really all about outsmarting the enemy team and not beating them head on. And as this tank seems to have that beautiful merge, or tendency to go way more towards the light tank role, then it shouldn't matter that much, because it's going to be challenging no matter what. But yeah, check the speed here, guys. This went very, very fast. Definitely faster than I'm used to. But maybe too fast even for the enemy to arrive. Notice the aim time, because yeah, on paper 1.5 seconds, yep, but I'm sure that we can we can count some additional seconds whenever it stops. But it's fast. It's definitely fast, and it's definitely faster than what we usually see. So we got one more. So we actually bounced that guy. Put another one in. Beautiful. So we got 4.33 seconds reload. Yes, especially like for this map right now, it will definitely have taken bigger advantage of having a gun rammer fitted. Where you can get that rate of fire to go just below those 4 seconds. But it's still fast enough, because usually after I fire, I usually tend to go backwards. And having that, I don't personally think that I'm going to take that gigantic advantage of those 10% extra for this particular tank. Not in this game mode. Put another one in. Can be a bit challenging at times. Can we put in that one? Let's try one more. Sometimes that guy doesn't make it easier. Yeah. So of course when I'm not even aiming for it, then the shell hits. Irony sometimes is amazing. Pushing or pushing or not pushing? Okay, this guy is pushing. Okay. But wow, that was bad, okay. Do something, yeah. Probably a very bad idea. One more in. It's really often, it's very often to just know the reload speed of the enemy team and just to put that extra shells. But definitely when you just overdo it or you get too bloodthirsty, yeah, you get punished instantly, as we can directly see here on our HP, which is, yeah, not existing at this stage. It's all about not going to exactly push, start getting fired yet. Straight fire. There we go. And that's the other good thing, is that, you know, when you have such a beautiful reload speed, it's, you know, I tend, at least myself, to very often just to take those extra snapshots, because if I miss, well, I'm I'll reload it again after those 4 seconds. Ooh, that was quite lucky shot that one, because it was far from fully aimed. Put another one in. Beautiful. But you can see you really need to fight for those shots. Got some spotting there. Beautiful. Come on. So, yeah, gun is precise, but could be better. Could be better. Together with the tank commander. Nevertheless, guys, we are up at 2,400 damage and 1,500 spotting. But keep in mind, we could have died during 5, 6, 7 different scenarios just looking back. And this is what very often happens. You do one slight mistake and you're going directly back to garage. So it's really not player friendly, this tank. You really need to take those chances, but you cannot overdo it. So it heavily, if there's one tank that really relies heavily, especially in the medium tank class, on your knowledge of enemy tanks, then this one is there. And that is why also it feels that the merge between the light and the medium tank is so big, because all the knowledge you have as a medium tank player, well, light tank player, sorry, you definitely need to utilize it fully for this medium tank. We have the last guy hiding somewhere. Let's see if he drowned himself or if he's still there. There he is. Hopefully we can get a shot in before he does. Yeah. Beautiful. 2,700 damage and 1,583 spotting. Okay guys, let's take another game. Okay guys, so here we are in Prokhorovka. I'm playing with Snowrang Messen in his Progetto 54. This map I actually quite enjoy, because I usually tend to play those medium, the more medium-ish tanks. And for that reason, I really like to go towards the 0 line. Because 1 line, that's very often, yes, of course, if I'm playing a light tank, I will go through the 1-2 line during early mid, and especially maybe late game. But for the medium tank playstyle, I really enjoy the 0 line, because you can very much often control that one. For the heavy tanks that usually go at the D6, that's really a boring spot in my opinion, because now it's quite good we don't have any artillery, but in games where you have like 2 or 3 artillery, yeah, you're just standing there for 5 minutes and just receiving shell after shell. It's not really the most interesting gameplay style in my opinion. Well, let's see if we can utilize our view range here. We should be able, because I have the commander's vision system, to outspot the enemy tanks without them being, there we go, without they able to spot us, which we're hoping for. Yeah. And this is the thing, because yes, we could of course put a gun ram to get that 10% extra DPM, and we could maximize it, and I like maximizing things. But that commander's vision system, it really gives that extra boost for what we are capable to do in regarding when we want to take that spotting role. And here's also a good indication of that the camo value, that yes, it is not the best in class, but it's not far from. And with those around 30, when stationary, it is definitely not bad at all. Now, of course, we put a shell in, this should spot us, yeah. And that's as often where I should not have done that. And as it really gets punished by that. It's all about timing, of course. Sometimes I get too bloodthirsty. Try to put some shells in on the side here. So definitely see that the gun reloading is fast enough that we can usually fire 2 shells into the tanks, or at least 2 shells before they go away. But at that range, I really wish it had better shell velocity, because right now we were lucky enough to hit some of them. But it is very often where if it just had those 200 meters more per second, it would make a big difference. And firing heat from that range, it's no bueno. Wow. Okay, now the guard came to get revenge, and as you guys see, suddenly the HP just gets taken away from us within few seconds. And that's also the very challenging part I noticed when playing with this tank, is when you do a mistake, if you're lucky, yeah, you will live a bit longer. That it definitely has in common. What is... what was that? This tank definitely has in common together with the light tanks. Oh, beautiful. You definitely need to give the shot some lead before firing at that range. So yeah, the U does that. Okay. So he completely ignored the list. Wanted to shoot me. Oh, that's beautiful. I have to help out the lister because there's no way he's going to survive solo there. Let's see what is he going to push. What? Okay, there's the brass down. Okay, this is just getting a bit hectic here. I need to hide behind this rock. If he's pushing, then I need to push. But okay, he's pushing. He's pushing. Come on, come on. Hopefully, we'll not focus on us. We have only 241 health. We outsmart his turret speed. Oh, this is not good. That was close. Too close. Too close. Let's go push it up there. Let's see. Okay, went down. He went down again. And the Barasta, okay, there's plenty of action right now. I don't really feel that comfortable with the 241 HP. It's good we have the list with us, put that extra pressure, because I'm certain that if he wasn't here, we'd be back in garage. So, how much can we poke over here? Can we actually... Yeah. The projector. Ooh, that was close. The projector nearly got us. Take some chances, but not too many because of the HP. 7-2. So of course we want to put in. Let's see if we can get some few. Or maybe we can get a shot into this guy. 164. Okay, that was a very low. So 164. Yeah. Come on. Oh, stop. So the ice 3A, should we put some pressure? It looks like it's already very well busy with the other guys. The thing is, I don't want to put too much pressure and then take the whole chance to just hit him for those, well, at times 200 alpha damage. And then get spotted and then get killed by, yeah, the 703 or whatever else they got there. Ooh, nice. Come on. 13-3. 2 tanks left. Can we put it? Okay. And last guy. But yeah, it's not bad, guys. 349 damage and 1607. Not bad. So, the Kampfpanzer 07RH. What do you think of it? And most importantly, is it worth the gold or grind? Well, the thing is that I want first to highlight is that this tank is definitely not for everyone. And in the hands of an experienced player who have mastered and enjoys especially light tank gameplay, has good map knowledge, good battle awareness, then there's a very good chance that you're going to feel just at home with this tank. But I must again strongly highlight that this tank is definitely not for everyone. Because this tank has very poor alpha damage, not existing armor in my opinion, slow to average shell penetration and shell velocity, which all together make this tank one of the hardest tanks to play very well with in my opinion. But what it has going for it is awesome DPM for a medium tank, impressive gun depression, good camo values alongside decent view range, amazing gun handling and epic mobility for a medium tank. One thing is for sure, that the Kampfpanzer 07RH in its purest form is a tank that will challenge all the knowledge that you as a tank commander has gathered over the years. The slightest mistake will easily cost you your tank, and if I personally have an off day in World of Tanks where everything just seems to go against me, then I should definitely stay far away from this tank. Active and aggressive light tank gameplay style is some of the most challenging in World of Tanks, and what makes the Kampfpanzer 07RH interesting is that it seems to beautifully merge the light and the medium tank class in one. And that of course leads us to the question, how many facepalms would I give this brand new T8 premium German Kampfpanzer 07RH marathon tank? Well, it receives 4 facepalms. The important thing to notice is that this rating is based on what some of the best performance would be in a super skilled player's hands. Because originally, my first 30 games, I had this tank rated of 5 out of 5. But because it simply didn't retain that value, it's simply because of the sheer difficulty of having an epic game reliably. Because ironically enough, because it is so fragile and because it is not a light tank, in some ways it becomes situational and you find yourself constantly looking towards new opportunities, and sometimes they are simply not there. And also very vital to mention is that for the general World of Tanks player, this particular tank would most likely be rated somewhere between 2 and 3. And another very important detail to notice is that if this particular tank had a mediocre DPM of around 2000, like the other medium tanks have, then it would have received a facepalm rating of 3 out of 5, because the T44-100 would have been my preferred choice for that reason. Yes, the T44-100 feels more sluggish in comparison to the 07RH, but that extra 50 alpha damage makes the T44-100 more pleasant to play with and way less stressful. But because the Kampfpanzer has that superior DPM, that it also interestingly opens up for the potential for the tank to be used for the more competitive skirmish battles, and that especially goes for those teams that prioritizes damage per minute, gun handling and mobility above anything else. And if you already own a T44-100 or love to play aggressive light tanks like the LT432, then I surely believe that you will feel just at home with this particular tank. This tank, in my opinion, is definitely more challenging to play with in comparison to its Soviet counterpart, but luckily it also means that it has that greater potential when everything just clicks. So what I'm trying to say, guys, is that this tank is not easy to play with, and in my opinion, only 10% of the player base is going to be able to fully utilize this particular tank. And in my opinion, both the Borask, the Projector, the T44-100 are way easier to play reliably good with. But for those very few tank commanders out there that prefers epic medium tank mobility, awesome gun handling combined with some of the very best DPM in its tier, for the sacrifice of low alpha damage, challenging shield velocity especially at long ranges, and the lack of armor, well, then there's a very good chance that you're going to enjoy this new tank. I know I do. Okay guys, let's finish up. I hope that this tank review was helpful towards your decision on whether you should dedicate your time for the grind or alternatively pick one up from the premium shop. And thanks a lot for watching, guys. This was my tank review number 38. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think of the German Kampfpanzer 07RH premium tank in the comments below. Did you pick one up? And if so, what is your opinion of this tank? And as always, if you'd like to see more crazy content from my side, feel free to leave a like or even subscribe. It's a big thumbs up for me and I appreciate it a lot. Cheers guys, take care and see you next time.